just shot her two kids.
Who just shot?
Her mom, the mom. Damn it, get over here.
The sons.
There is no justice. There's nothing that's going to bring my little boys back.
A mother who murdered her twin 4-year-old sons in 2001 will spend the first night of her 2 life sentences behind bars, Friday. Leslie Demeniuk sat emotionless as her fate was announced. She already knew it would be life in prison. The mandatory sentence. Her attorney argued that Demeniuk shot and killed her boys because prescription drugs caused her to be temporarily insane, but the jury did not buy the story. The boy's father, Tommy Demeniuk, presented one of 2 victim impact statements at Friday's hearing. Tommy Demeniuk clutched a photograph of himself with his sons during happier times as he told the judge all about the boys and their favorite books and games. He made no mention of Leslie Demeniuk. Nobody took the stand in defense of Leslie Demeniuk, although her stepfather, Eric Schoenig, told reporters after the hearing that she was a victim too. The gun that killed our grandsons was not the gun that Leslie Demeniuk fired, but the gun that the pharmaceutical companies put in her hand, Schoenig said. Before the sentencing, Leslie Demeniuk's lawyer asked the judge to set aside the verdict. That was denied, and Leslie Demeniuk was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each of the little boys. The former boyfriend of the woman convicted Tuesday of shooting and killing her twin 4-year-old boys was afraid that she would hurt somebody. Anthony Ortiz just thought Leslie Demeniuk was going to hurt herself, not her children. I knew something was going to happen. I just never dreamed it was going to be this, Ortiz said Wednesday. I feared for her own life. I never thought this would happen. Instead, Demeniuk killed her sons as they watched television in a Sawgrass home on March 17, 2001. Ortiz was the one who found the boys' bodies and called 911. Despite all that has happened, Ortiz said he still loves Demeniuk. I'll always stand by her side, Ortiz told Channel 4's Dan Levitin the day after she was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. I'll always be there when they go to court. I'll always try and help her. I believe in her 100%. Like her attorneys, Ortiz places the blame for the murders on the side effects of the antidepressants she was taking. She was a free spirit, and the thought of her taking this drug, Ortiz said, I knew that there was something wrong. It was not the medication she should have been prescribed. Ortiz says Demeniuk even went to the doctor with her concerns, and her medication was changed from Zoloft to Paxil. 2 days later, Ortiz walked in to find her 2 boys shot to death. The defense claims that a drug interaction contributed to a mental state where she was not responsible for her actions and was not allowed at trial. Motions on that issue and others were why the case took more than 5 years to go to trial. Last week, nearly 5 years after that incident, Ortiz testified at Demeniuk's trial. It was tough to see her because I believe in her 100%, he said through tears. It brought back a lot of memories and pain. Ortiz copes with that pain by doing extensive research on the effects of antidepressants. He also passes out flyers, he says, to educate the public about the potential dangers. With Demeniuk facing life in prison, he wants her not to give up. There's still people who believe in her, Ortiz said. A lot of people who are still going to fight for her, nearly 5 years after her twin boys were shot to death. It took a jury 3 hours to find Leslie Demeniuk guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. After 6 days of expert testimony, the 6-member jury rejected defense arguments that Demeniuk was insane, finding her guilty of killing her 4-year-old sons in her father's Sawgrass home on March 17, 2001. Demeniuk, 36, showed no reaction when the verdict was read, but the boy's father, Tommy Demeniuk, was too emotional to comment. Demeniuk's lawyers also left the courtroom without commenting, but the verdict angered her stepfather. Our hands were tied in a big wad, said Eric Schoenig, Demeniuk's stepfather. said, "We could never talk about the SRIs, the antidepressants Demeniuk was taking, how they might have affected our daughter. It's a shame. It is a miscarriage of justice." Even if Demeniuk's attorneys were able to introduce more evidence about pharmaceutical drugs and their effect on her mental state, some experts said it still may not have been enough to win an acquittal. It's hard to sell. Nevertheless, you do what you can. There were some outstanding lawyers involved in this case, and you wait for a verdict, and you never know what's coming, said criminal defense attorney Tom Cushman. Demeniuk's attorneys did not dispute that she killed the boys. Instead, they claimed she was not guilty because of insanity, but were barred from introducing evidence that an interaction of prescription drugs may have resulted in her violent behavior. Prosecutors said despite drug and alcohol use, Demeniuk knew what she was doing and should spend the rest of her life in prison. During its closing arguments Monday, the prosecution retraced what occurred when Demeniuk shot and killed her children. Prosecutor Noah McKinnon told the jury it was a brutal case of first-degree murder. It took time, and the intent to kill was in her mind when she looked him in the face, put the gun to his forehead, and pulled the trigger, McKinnon said. The defense argued that alcohol mixed with antidepressants led to the shocking incident, and that Demeniuk was delusional when she shot the boys. However, McKinnon strongly disagreed. All of the telephone calls that day were not psychotic. All of her actions that day were not psychotic, McKinnon said. In his closing arguments, defense attorney Bill Shepard passionately disagreed with the prosecution, claiming that prescription, drugs and alcohol mixed to cause Demeniuk to become temporarily insane. Why it happened was because Leslie Demeniuk did not know the difference between right and wrong when she pulled the trigger, Shepard said. The only explanation for these hideous actions is that she thought she was saving her children. She was taking them to a better place. It was because of a total delusion. The jury began deliberations about 4:30 p.m. Monday. They resumed deliberations just after 9 a.m. Tuesday, returning to the courtroom just over 1 hour later with the verdict, guilty as charged. Channel 4's Dan Levington spoke with one of the jurors, who told him they were absolutely exhausted from 2 weeks of testimony and jury selection. The jurors asked to be recessed Monday night because they were overwhelmed and wanted to return Tuesday morning to examine the evidence more thoroughly. The juror also said one of the key points in determining the verdict was the blood alcohol level in Demeniuk's system on the day of the murders, more than 4 times the legal limit. There was no word Tuesday night whether or not Demeniuk would seek an appeal. The judge said he would sentence her within 30 days. Demeniuk could face life in prison without parole. The defense in the Leslie Demeniuk murder trial rested Friday morning after the second psychologist it put on the stand testified for a second day. Psychologist Dr. Ernest Miller again told the jury that Demeniuk was delusional when she gunned down her twin sons in 2001. The prosecution called psychologist Dr. Barbara Kerwin as its first rebuttal witness. Kerwin examined Demeniuk over 3 days in 2003 and told the jury it was her opinion that Demeniuk was not insane and knew precisely what she was doing when she killed her sons. My opinion is that at the time of the offense, Leslie Demeniuk did not suffer from a mental disease or defect, and that she was sane in the sense that she knew what she was doing. She understood the wrong things that she did, Kerwin said. Kerwin said that during her interview with the defendant, Demeniuk talked about a long history of substance abuse. She had stated to me that she had used alcohol and other substances, including marijuana, LSD, and cocaine, Kerwin said. Kerwin also testified about how Demeniuk ended her marriage with her husband, specifically how she informed her husband of her decision. She notified him about her decision to terminate the marriage when he was away on a ship-to-shore telephone call, which struck me as a pretty, kind of, a cruel way to terminate a marriage, Kerwin said. Following the prosecution, the defense's cross-examination of Kerwin became very heated, especially when the subject of the murder weapon came up. Defense attorney Bill Shepard pointed to Kerwin's report detailing her interviews with Demeniuk and demanded Kerwin read the section about the gun. The argument over the gun was sparked by Shepard's claim that the gun was not mentioned in the doctor's notes. Kerwin, however, said that it was mentioned between her and Demeniuk. Kerwin also said in summary that Demeniuk's actions leading up to the day of the crime showed that she was just a very selfish person. The second day of defense testimony in the Leslie Demeniuk murder trial began Thursday, with the prosecution's cross-examination of a psychologist who specializes in treating depression. Dr. David Menkes testified Wednesday about the dangerous side effects of combining different medications. Demeniuk's defense attorneys claim the combination of the two antidepressants she was taking, along with a sedative and alcohol, rendered Demeniuk temporarily insane when she shot her twin sons to death in 2001. I believe she was certainly insane, and at the period when she decided to shoot the children, retrieve the weapon, load it, come back in, and do the deed, Menkes said. However, the prosecution argues that Demeniuk knew precisely what she was doing, and on Thursday, they ardently cross-examined Menkes. How can you say before this jury that she didn't know what she was doing when she dialed him up immediately after shooting the last child and told exactly what she had done and the consequences, that they were dead? How can you say that, sir? Said prosecutors. Yes, I do believe she knew what she was doing. She knew the consequences, but she did not know it was wrong, Menkes said. Several other witnesses followed Menkes' testimony, including forensic expert Dr. Ernest Miller, who told the court that he did everything in his power to find out why Demeniuk killed her sons, but that it was not easy to find an answer. The fact that she had 4 years of bonding, extensive bonding, and ended up using a .357 Magnum to end a relationship. It's unbelievable and hard for me to accept, Miller said. Miller said he believes Demeniuk was psychotic during the murders. He said she was suicidal and could not separate herself and her misery from her children. She believed that at the point of the crime, that the world was so terrible and so horrible that she did not think she could live, and she was so bonded, pathologically and strongly with her children that she included them in the act, Miller said. Miller also mentioned the adverse side effects of combining medications and said he believed Demeniuk had a psychotic episode the day of the crime. After calling 2 final witnesses Wednesday afternoon, the prosecution rested its case against Leslie Demeniuk. Prosecutors say Demeniuk killed her 4-year-old twin sons in cold blood in 2001. Over the past week, prosecutors have called numerous witnesses to the stand, including Demeniuk's ex-husband, her boyfriend, who found the boys dead in Demeniuk's father's Ponte Vedra Beach home, and a homicide detective who was one of the first people to arrive at the crime scene. Before the state rested its case, it put 2 more key witnesses on the stand. One was an expert who examined the scene following the murders, and the other was a medical examiner who described exactly what happened to the 2 children. After the prosecution rested its case, Demeniuk's defense lawyers began the daunting task of convincing the jury she did not know what she was doing when she shot her sons to death. The first witness the defense called was psychologist Dr. David Menkes, who examined Demeniuk in 2002, more than a year after the crime was committed. Menkes practices medicine in Britain and specializes in treating depression. Given the particularly horrific details of what happened on March 17, 2001, I was very motivated to try to understand the best I could what happened and how it happened, said Menkes. Demeniuk's attorneys argued that the combination of 2 antidepressants, Zoloft and Paxil, along with the sedative Zantac and alcohol, contributed to her actions in 2001. Menkes confirmed that the side effects from the combination of drugs could be severe. What worries me is that it is often done without much planning or monitoring. Of course, the possibility of a side effect of 2 drugs is much greater than with 1 drug at a time, Menkes said. The defense says the combination left Demeniuk temporarily insane. Demeniuk's defense is expected to last at least 1 more day. Before closing arguments, the prosecution will be able to call rebuttal witnesses. The jury in the Leslie Demeniuk murder trial heard more about the grim crime scene evidence on Tuesday. One of the witnesses called by prosecutors was lead detective Sergeant J. Lawing, one of the first investigators, called after victims James and John Demeniuk were shot to death inside their grandfather's Ponte Vedra Beach home. The victim's mother, Leslie Demeniuk, has admitted to killing the boys, but claims she was insane at the time of the March 2001 incident. As Lawing described the clothing the boys were wearing, Leslie Demeniuk cried, as did the boys' father, Tommy Demeniuk, who testified earlier in the week about the last time he saw his sons alive. Lawing also read a statement signed by Leslie Demeniuk that read, "When I got back in the room, I shot both boys in the head. I think I shot Jamie first. I think I shot one of them twice. I don't know what was going through my head. I heard one of the boys still breathing." Earlier in the day, some of the first people to come in contact with Leslie Demeniuk on the day of the shooting testified, including a deputy with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Department and a paramedic. The deputy and one of the emergency workers at the crime scene testified that Leslie Demeniuk was coherent. The police officer asked if she knew why she was there, and she stated that she shot her baby. She told police that the gun was in the house, that it was her father's gun. She got it out of the closet and then shot her children, said emergency room physician Dr. Karen Fleck. The boyfriend of a woman accused of killing her twin sons testified Monday that her behavior changed when she started taking antidepressants, then got worse when her prescription was changed just 2 days before. The boys were killed. Anthony Ortiz handed out flyers outside the courtroom that read, "Exposing the truth. Is your medication loaded?" Inside the courtroom, he testified about Leslie Demeniuk's behavior after she began taking a medication called Zoloft. Ortiz told the jury that Demeniuk was disoriented, forgetful, and easily lost attention in the days and weeks before her 2 4-year-olds were shot to death in March 2001. She didn't sound right. Something was getting worse. It sounded worse, Ortiz said. Ortiz told the jury that she slapped him for no reason a week before the boys were shot, and she punched him the night before he found the boys dead. He said he had asked her to return his Zoloft because he thought she was taking too many. Ortiz said he still loves Demeniuk. Also on Monday, prosecutors played the tape of the 911 call Ortiz made when he discovered the boys dead in the Sawgrass Country Club of Demeniuk's father. Demeniuk wiped away tears as the tape played in the courtroom, describing the scene inside her father's home back in March 2001. The state said in its opening statement that Demeniuk had a history of drug use, and on the day of the murders, she had mixed antidepressants with alcohol. According to court documents, her blood alcohol was measured just after her arrest at 3 times the legal limit. Prosecutors also say Demeniuk killed the boys to hurt their father. The couple's divorce was about to be finalized. Demeniuk's defense: lawyers contend that she was insane when she shot and killed her sons, something no sane mother would ever do. They also say there is evidence in the 911 tape that Demeniuk's medication played a role in what happened to her little boys. They wanted to present scientific evidence about the interaction of antidepressants and alcohol. Still, Judge John Alexander ruled there was not enough documented science to bolster that legal claim, a decision that was upheld on appeal to the Florida Supreme Court. Testimony is expected to resume on Tuesday at about 9 a.m. Physiatrists are still expected to testify and talk about what Demeniuk's state of mind was on the day of the shootings. A grieving father took the stand and testified Friday about the last time he saw his twin sons alive, his ex-wife accused of murdering them. Tommy Demeniuk was the first witness on the stand in the murder trial of his ex-wife, Leslie Demeniuk. According to police, Leslie Demeniuk shot her 4-year-old boys nearly 5 years ago. During opening statements, both sides painted 2 very different pictures. Prosecutors explained to the jury how Leslie Demeniuk got her gun, loaded it, and gunned down her sons as they watched TV. Defense attorneys described her as a troubled and depressed woman who was taking medications which they said made her temporarily insane. While on the stand, Tommy Demeniuk told the jury he tried to make their marriage work for the boys' sake. But after their birth, it was clear she cared more for her desires than his or theirs. He said she drank too much and, after they separated, worried about his boys when they were with her. "I didn't believe her lifestyle would provide them with all their needs," said Tommy Demeniuk. He told the jury she once said if the boys wanted to do drugs when they grew up, she would prefer they do drugs with her. Under cross-examination, Tommy Demeniuk acknowledged Leslie was a good mother once before her behavior changed. Leslie Demeniuk's defense lawyers contended that when she shot and killed her sons, she was not in her right mind and did what no sane mother would ever do. Testimony is scheduled to resume Monday morning. The man who was dating Leslie Demeniuk at the time she killed her sons is expected to testify. He was the one who called 911 after walking in and seeing the two boys shot. Leslie Demeniuk fired a revolver through her 4-year-old son's skull, then chased his fleeing twin brother and shot at him twice before fatally hitting him in the ear, according to prosecutors in Demeniuk's first-degree murder trial. She put the gun to his forehead and pulled the trigger, Assistant State Attorney Noah McKinnon said during his opening statement Friday. "There's an explosion, blood everywhere. She even found skull fragments on her body." Demeniuk, 36, admits using a .357 Magnum given to her by her father to shoot her twin sons, James Richard and John Thomas, on March 17, 2001, but claims she is not guilty because of insanity. If convicted, Demeniuk faces life in prison without parole. Prosecutors changed tack before the trial began and decided not to seek the death penalty. The defense claims the drugs Demeniuk was taking to alleviate her anxiety and depression backfired and instead exacerbated her condition. The combination of prescription drugs, Paxil and Xanax, mixed with bourbon and beer, created a mind-altering cocktail that put the mother of two in such a state she did not understand her actions when she shot her sons. When she was taking these medicines and experiencing these side effects, the evidence will show Leslie did not decide to kill her children in the ordinary sense that you and I would decide to go buy a car or pick up groceries, the defense attorney William Shepard said in his opening statement. An action that a mind decides to do is not necessarily an action of a sane mind. Demeniuk switched from the antidepressant Zoloft 2 days before the shootings at her doctor's urging, according to the defense. As the state's first witness, the victim's father, Thomas Demeniuk, testified that his ex-wife drank heavily and that he feared she was not providing adequate care for their sons. The couple was granted a divorce 4 days before the shootings. "I sought custody because I loved Johnny and James," the father said. The lifestyle she was leading would not provide them their needs. The former U.S. Navy officer said he did not contest a recommendation for maternal custody because he was away frequently for the Navy and knew he would never win. "I had military taped across my head," he said. The custody evaluator believed she was the primary caregiver because she was with them all the time. Demeniuk told the jury he married the defendant after a 2 to 3 month affair that he described as very physical, but later testified he did not think she ever loved him. When Leslie Demeniuk informed him she was pregnant, he said he had decided to marry her. "You own up to your responsibilities," Demeniuk said, "and I believed in having them." Thomas Demeniuk described his wife as a controlling woman who never treated him with respect, but later testified that he loved her very much while they were married. Prosecutors are expected to continue their case Monday in the 2-week St. John's County Circuit Court trial. Jury selection began Monday in the murder trial of a Ponte Vedra mother, accused of killing her 2 sons almost 5 years ago. Prosecutors say Leslie Demeniuk shot and killed her twin 4-year-old sons, Jamie and Johnny, at their father's home in Sawgrass Country Club in March 2001. They say the killings were premeditated, and cold-blooded court documents mistakenly released in 2002 included Demeniuk's confession, in which she acknowledged she killed her sons to hurt her soon-to-be ex-husband. Their divorce was about to be finalized. "I shot both boys in the head. I think I shot Jamie twice. I think I shot one of them twice," Demeniuk is quoted as saying to detectives. The state says they'll show Demeniuk has a history of drug use, and on the day of the murders, she had mixed antidepressants with alcohol. According to court documents, on the day of the shootings, her blood alcohol was measured at 3 times the legal limit. Demeniuk's lawyers are expected to present an insanity defense, but they will not be allowed to claim that insanity was the result of the mixture of antidepressants and alcohol. Judge John Alexander ruled that there was not enough documented science to bolster that legal claim, and a decision was upheld on appeal to the Florida Supreme Court. A jury pool of about 100 people is available to be interviewed for the trial, and court officials said it could take several days to impanel a 6-member jury. After hearing several defense motions, the court was recessed for the day at about 3:30 p.m. Jury selection is scheduled to resume Wednesday at 9 a.m. Prosecutors had planned to seek the death penalty if she was convicted, but changed their minds 2 weeks ago.